Implementation Consulting Partners, ICF, James and Ken. And the real title of this is all about driving the value from an implementation of a GRC tool. Implementation and getting value is involving 4 key factors: people, process, data, and system. The MetricStream GRC system is just that one piece. You need to put all 4 together. So we're going to try and explore those a little bit, try and see how those are overcome, and give you some insights. Maybe you can share those with a chance for Q&A at the end, if that's okay. So maybe if I can just start with introductions. Denise, would you like to introduce yourself first and go there?
I think you've kind of done it already.
Downstairs on the scene.
I'm
Terry, but you got a cable. I can do it.
We are part of the Mediolanum banking group, an Italian-based banking group. In Ireland, we have a significantly sized asset manager, a management company looking after about €60 million worth of assets. We also have an insurance entity advisor for the banking group. We're at about 150 people in the Dublin office. We have an active investment strategy, so we're busy, complex, interesting, and growing from an Irish perspective. And just to give a bit of context for the team, there's about 22, 23 people sitting within the risk and compliance team servicing the Irish operations.
Ken and James?
You're on. I'm Ken Simons. I'm one of the partners, founders at ICF Consulting. Myself, James, and our third partner, Kunjan, who's travelling at the moment on business. Founded ICF about 3 or so years ago. We've been working with MetricStream for pretty much that full length of time. We've got complementary sets of skills, so risk and compliance background, significant transformation background, and then operational business process and technology as well. So we complement those skills, and we use consultants with a blended set of skills. And we think that's an important thing because it draws out the value across all of those different areas, basically, as we work with clients. James, introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm James Dorrington, another founder partner. I think Ken summed up the company quite well.
Thank you all. So let me just ask Denise, first of all, what was the initial challenge, the status quo, the before, if you like, before you chose a tool and an implementation partner? Where were things at, and what challenges were you looking to address by providing a tool?
Maybe I'll give a bit of background before I answer that question directly. So although we're an asset manager, we're a traditional asset manager, we manage UCITS, we manage retail UCITS, they're not particularly complex. We do want to leverage technology where we can to help and enable us as a business. And there have been continues to be significant investments across all of our disciplines to enable efficiency. From a compliance perspective, we had a business that was entirely hooked on the drug of Microsoft. So emails, Word, Excel, PowerPoints, you name it, we used it, and we couldn't get enough of it. And I don't think that we're necessarily going to completely detach from that, but we found another alternative. The motivator for us was the simple fact that we can't continue to scale with humans as the regulatory environment grows and the dynamic shifts towards more checking, more monitoring, more reviewing. For a number of reasons. It's a limited market. Trying to get the right skill sets can be difficult. Trying to grow the skill sets is challenging. You can grow, but then you lose, and it's a continuous cycle. So we needed an alternative to supplement that human continued growth and to enable us to scale and grow and to do more, because we want to do more to make sure we're doing the right thing from a risk and compliance perspective. But because we have a culture of investing in technology, there was a door there ready to be pushed when I joined Mediolanum about 2 years ago to invest. So we set on that journey to find a partner that would enable us to do things with a little bit more sophistication and a little bit more elegance. What do I mean by that? I'll give you a basic example. When we were looking at our third-party due diligence, God, we loved an Excel spreadsheet. So every third party got an Excel spreadsheet to fill out, and we got it back, and we ticked and we bashed the Excel spreadsheets. And it just didn't seem to match who we were, who we'd become as an organisation. It was inconsistent with the way we would engage from an investment perspective, the way we'd engage with our clients, but yet we were still engaging that way with our third parties and with the partners that we're really proud to work with. It didn't feel right, it jarred with us, and that was really one of our motivators to begin with, that we wanted something a little bit more elegant. And we also wanted not to be continuously using Excel spreadsheets. and they were the real motivators, and they drove the initial engagement. We wanted something smart, something a little intuitive, but most importantly, something that was simple to use and that looked and felt intuitive as a system, so that we could get our internal users and our third parties to engage with it.
Thanks for that. When you looked at that system, the tool to take things on, at what stage do you think we need a little bit more help and start looking at a partner like ICF?
I'll circle back to my answer about scaling and capacity and resources, and when we were doing our due diligence and when we were advancing our due diligence, it was actually MetricStream who suggested that really to optimise and to get us to the end of the journey quicker, we needed more resources, but not just any resources, we needed more specialist capability. And you and your team introduced the concept of partnering to support that implementation program. I will say we took quite a number of modules, and if I was starting again, I maybe would have paced it maybe a little bit more, but at the same time I'm really glad that we did it. But we needed a partner who was going to work to help us understand, so really to get us started, because it's quite a daunting adventure to take on, a task to undertake when you haven't a familiarity with the system, and you're on that journey and you're trying to determine what the landscape really looks like. So we needed a partner that we could work with. It was an excellent recommendation and suggestion, and I think it was definitely one that's made our project a little bit more successful.
Thanks for that. Ken and James, we're all about focusing and driving that value so that it's not just a system and we overcome the people and the process problems and provide that resource. But can you explain what those challenges are that you were able to alleviate and actually deliver that value?
Yeah, I suppose I mean, going back to Denise's, initial context. We started at the very, very beginning with Denise. We worked with her team to actually formulate a business case, basically. So we think that that's the most important step when you do something like this, because you need to get the business to buy into something like this, because it's a non-trivial exercise, basically. And we spent a bit of time, we were there, I think, a week or two when we were working with yourself and your team. We did a presentation to your local board to get them interested and enthused about what we were doing. And you know, after we left, I think there was some continued discussions around, you know, the benefits and the opportunities. And I think for us that's the single most important thing we think you need to do whenever you do something like this, because risk and compliance is often seen as a bit of a cost or a chore, and you need to get the business guys to understand the benefits that they get out of it for themselves as well, because it's not just a risk and compliance exercise, it's a full business exercise. We also spent time talking through some of the, some of the cultural aspects of this as well. So this is, in our minds, not a technology problem, it's a people problem that's enabled by technology. And you know, as part of those discussions, we spent a lot of time with Denise and the team and the business guys talking through that. And we also highlighted that, you know, you're buying a product, you're buying a credible product. There's value in that product as well. So when you go into this, consider changing what you do. You know, the product's been built off a lot of effort and knowledge from the existing client. So we said, you know, we're not criticising anything that anybody does. If you learn the product and work with us, we'll be able to optimise what you get out of it. And you'll also discover things that you never knew or never thought about doing as well, basically. So I think it was more thinking outside of the technology, thinking about the values, thinking about people, and then just getting prepared and organised around some of the, I think, the logistics and responsibilities that people were going to take.
I think the point about resisting the temptation to change the product, I think you heard the Nordea guys and Gaurav was talking about it earlier as well, in terms of you've bought a best-in-class system, so why would you then try to recreate all the processes that bring you maybe to this summit today because you're looking for a product? So why would you buy it and change it and try and recreate all that mess, for want of a better word? I mean, I've been a risk manager, I've been in many people's shoes, so why do that? And hopefully as risk managers as well, you'll realise that, you know, when you do RCSAs with people and stuff like that, when they tell you that they've moved from a manual to an automated process, instantly that flag goes off in your head of you've changed your process. So what you need to realise is if you commit to buying one of these systems, you've changed your process automatically. But it's not the tail wagging the dog, right? So an expression I used with Denise recently is you've changed your process but not your outcomes. So all those great outcomes that you've defined in your risk department already exist when you put the system in, and you can build on those. But you've changed your process, and that's what you need to acknowledge, and that's what you need to go out and sell to the business. We've changed the process to make your life easier, our life easier, so on and so forth. So don't get caught up on the idea that buying a system means that it's the tail wagging the dog. You've improved your process, and you kind of have to accept that.
I think maybe what James and Ken are slightly underselling is that for my program, for my project, that 5-minute nugget of information, we got that right at the beginning. When we were a project team, when we were a super enthusiastic group of compliance and risk professionals who could see the outcomes that we wanted to achieve, and we were only focused on the outcomes. We needed this to level us, to understand that we needed to really get practical about what our outcomes looked like, being certain they were definitely the outcomes that we wanted, and then also looking at what might we be willing to adjust in our processes. What might we need to adjust? And I think it made us reflect much more deeply, because I think it's a natural instinct, isn't it? I've gone through a procurement process, I've gone and interviewed 5 vendors, I've broken it down to 3, I've done my interviews, I've done my third-party references, I found my vendor, bingo, I'm done.
Yeah.
And you're nowhere near the start line. And that's the real challenge, that it's a commitment. And then when you partner with a team like ICF and the experience that we had, we got the golden nuggets of information to really level us as a team, to settle us in, to get us to think strategically about how we were going to approach our implementation, and to realise that we weren't yet at the start line. So we took a good period of time to get to the formally launching the project and the programme, to really establish our different working teams, to determine where we were going to get some quick wins, which are really, really important when you take on a new system, because everybody thinks you've spent all this money, what does it do? So it's really, really important to plan your programme, to plan your project, to get your work streams ready, to get your own teams enthusiastic about taking on, maybe a multi-year project. Ours was definitely, and will continue to be, a multi-year project.
Coming back to that, I mean, the biggest challenge presumably is getting your people to come aligned to all those workshops, to accept change. Was that a challenge, or did they embrace it happily?
We have a robust culture of challenge in Mediolanum, so before we could get to the start, before we could actually finalise our procurement, we do a roadshow with our senior management team. So we have to get every senior manager going, yay, I agree, let's go forward, which I think is a good strategy. And it's not just for this tool, we do it for other systems where we're looking at making or implementing something that's materially different. And they really gave us a good challenge in terms of that piece around how do we integrate this into the business? How do we make this something that will be used not just by the risk and compliance team, but by the rest of the organisation? What will it look and feel like for those users? How do we bring them on a journey? So we've had a strong work stream around communications around our projects, where we were along the way. We have regular clinics every kind of 3 weeks that we invite anybody, an open door kind of clinic just before lunchtimes during the week, to allow senior managers or other members of the team to come in. We've done our town halls, we've done individual team presentations, so all of that communication continues to be super, super important. We use our system to get our staff to do some of their attestations, their annual attestations. I've done all my training, I've read all the policies, etc. So before every time we go out with one of those, we do a little refresher again, just to bring it back. And then we show them some of the smart things that we're doing with it, and then they all go, "Can you do that for me?
Yeah.
Can I get my process?"
That tends to be what happens. Yeah.
So now we're trying to temper enthusiasm from around the rest of the business, so that we can really start to live in the experience, because we're coming towards the end of implementation, and we now need to kind of wear the new clothes that we've just bought.
Over to Ken and James. How do you see the next few months in terms of driving that adoption and assisting that further value?
Yeah, so I think, one of the key things that we've also done with Denise and team is trying to get them in a position where they can, run and manage the system themselves. So, so that they're doing some of the configuration themselves. There's governance around the system as well, and I think one of the earlier sessions talked about that today as well. So, when we came in, I think one of the things we talked about is you're going to have to wean yourselves off of us, and we're going through that process at the moment. There's still a little bit of work that we'll probably do early next year. We're doing an upgrade as well with Denise. And I think that what we'll do is we'll probably share some ideas and thoughts around how the system can be rolled out further. I mean, Denise is, full on the way to rolling it out independently as a group, basically. So I think they'll get on quite swimmingly as on their own. I think that around the third party piece, there's a lot of work that we potentially need to do to roll that out more broadly. Operational risk, I think you've got policy, operational risk, the third party, reg change. And I can't remember and compliance management. Yeah. So, I mean, all of those are pretty much all up and running. Reg change is something that we need to just focus on in the new year. Well, I think one of the key things that Denise and team are working through is the content. That's something that we haven't touched on, isn't it? So the processes and the controls. So they've taken this as an opportunity to basically strip that all back and build it up again. And I think that it will make the system a lot more credible, usable and interactive for the people that are there, because the data will be new and fresh to them, basically, and that they'll know where it's come from. But above and beyond that, I think it's gone, well, to be quite frank. And I think as a group, they're happy with it. And to Denise's point, I think the thrill, I don't know if thrill's the right word, but one of the things that pleases us more than anything else is that the enthusiasm that Denise's business colleagues take on this as well, because that's one of the things that we talked about at the very, very beginning. So you have a series of delegated investment managers that we're reaching out to, and we're using some of the third-party risk pieces for, but in line with their strategy, trying to create a modern, efficient, effective window with the third parties. We're using the third-party risk module in a number of ways that we might not have anticipated, and I think that's power to the tool, basically, and I think that it builds on that enthusiasm that that Denise is talking about.
Thanks for that. Denise, we've got the third party used for brokers and all these other sort of slightly changed ways that you might envisage the solution, but where do you think the challenges that you didn't foresee were? What were the negatives, shall we say? Because we were saying about delivering value, and how did we overcome some of the negatives?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Every system will have its false starts. You think you're there, you're ready to go live, and then you'll go, oh, actually, it's just not there yet. So we definitely have had a few false starts with some of the modules where we think we're ready to go live, and we just needed a little bit more investment to really maximise what was there. I think, I don't want to call it a negative. I think maybe the unexpected piece for me was that we did choose to change some of our processes because they've been done that way, because the last person had done them that way, and they've been done that way forever in the past. And nobody questioned them. They were effective. They did what they needed to do. But we took an opportunity to make some changes. And we did sometimes start on the process of mirroring what we already had, and we may get down the road a little bit and then go, actually, we actually prefer the way the MetricStream logic is working, or the ICF or the wider team would have said, are you really sure that that's the way you want to do that? Would you think about changing your process a little bit? And it would be to the external eye unseen, but to a compliance practitioner or a risk practitioner, your process. I do X, then I do Y, and then I do Z. It was just changing some of those small iterations around that would actually accrue us longer term benefits. So some things that we thought were going to be quick. We've got a great process, it's documented, it's all there, you just need to code it up into the system. We tweaked. So that took time, and that was definitely...
And it doesn't always translate, Denise, either, does it? So when you think you've got a great outside of a system process, it doesn't always translate into a new system like that. So you do ultimately have to stand back and think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I think the benefit and the power of your team was that they did focus on outcomes. I don't like the word requirements. I think they're dangerous things to band about. I think, when you're making a systems decision at the beginning and you're doing an RFP, I think that's fine to have a check and bash list and go through stuff. But when you get into implementation, you need to think about your outcomes. If you're focused on a minutiae of detail, you invariably do the wrong thing. And I think Denise and team were very willing to talk and go away and think about things. And I think that's what's generated the success that they're seeing.
And through all these new processes, obviously you believe there's a saving in time and effort, but have you had a thought about quantifying that value? Have you looked at the hours saved and the better value that you might have gained from the solution?
That's a really fair question. We're just not quite there yet. So maybe to give a context, we're about 15, 16 months into the program.
It wouldn't be fair yet, yeah.
We've only gone live with one of our last pieces around third-party engagement and our due diligence process, and that was actually our big win, but we knew it was going to be our heaviest lift, so we left it to the end. We got really good advice, so we did some of the easier bits along the way, and we took longer then in the background to spin our wheels on that one. I think that's to be determined piece.
Yep.
But certainly when I would quantify, for example, the volume of work that was involved with us, it was nearly a full-time role just to do our ongoing due diligence. So internal, external due diligence, what we receive, what we send out, and analysing that, formulating it, popping it into your compliance reporting, sending it off to your risk team, blah, blah, blah. That was a full-time role for somebody, and a lot of it is administrative. There's a 20% layer of it that's the subjective and the real value add, but 80% of that was taking somebody's time, and I'm hoping, if you ask me that question, probably in 2 quarters' time, I'd have a different answer for you. But right now, we've bought a new set of clothes. We have to wear them. We have to understand how they work. We're probably spending time with the system in the same way we would have spent with the processes that we already had, because we need to be confident and be satisfied they're running the way we want them to run in the system. So I think we need a little bit longer.
Yeah, and that's very sensible.
When I came to visit you in Dublin, it was just amazing, the enthusiasm across the board of everyone involved in the project, and I think that's the missing value that sometimes is overlooked, is the value of bringing everyone together through these projects, the alignment, the fact that systems and processes do change. You don't have to stick with what you want, and actually if you do stick to the out of the box, it may be different, it may be better, but it does align people, and that's a sort of often a hidden value. Would you agree, guys? And Denise?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we I suppose we cut our teeth. Our first implementation was at a merger and a demerger, and they were bringing 2 separate businesses together that had 2 separate ways of doing things. So we used MetricStream as like the third way, so it became a unifying focus for everybody's activity, and that proved as being very, very successful, basically. So I think turning up with a credible product, and I mean, one of the key things, and again the Nordea guys mentioned this as well, is making sure that you understand the product, and spending time with the clients, make sure they understand the product and their choices, means that you generate that enthusiasm, because they're then in their own, they can control it themselves. Do you know what I mean? So Denise's team now have a level of information and understanding in the system to do stuff themselves. We can provide some guidance from our experience, but they can also do some stuff on their own, and they can also challenge us in the same way that we challenge them as well.
I've never heard a good argument against standardising process data and reporting, so it can only be a good thing, can't it?
Final words, Denise?
Look, if you're thinking about a journey, if you are thinking about making the change, I think it's definitely worth it. It will take more of your time and attention than you plan for. So they say if you're going to plan for your project, scope your time and double it. And that's probably a good example of, or a good indication, a yardstick in terms of the time that you'll spend with it, the time that I spent with the system. And I really just can't underestimate the importance of your programme and your project steering to make sure that you stay honest. And that also means sometimes slowing down. We did that twice during our project, where we just said, actually, we can't keep the pace that we've set for ourselves. So rather than do things poorly, we're going to slow. And we did have to pivot a few of our plans out. And I think just having that pragmatic approach when you step into a programme, I think is really, really important. And then the final thing I'd say is you've got to find a partner that you can work with really well. There has to be good chemistry. You have to have good engagement across the team. I think we were lucky to partner with ICF, and I think we would see the ICF team as part of our implementation team. It wasn't a them and us. it was very much a one team effort, and I think that's also important. And the more people you can get on your program, the better for me.
Yes.
Bring everyone in.
Can I open the floor to... We've got 3 minutes because we were overrunning start, but yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, that was very useful. I think to Denise's point, at the moment we're on the Bill Gates toolkit for managing risk. We haven't moved over to a system yet. It might be a question for the implementation partners. Now, we're on a migration stack for next year, and one thing we're battling with is when we migrate over, when it comes to risk and control data, naturally first line staff don't know it as well as risk champions, and we're trying to figure out who should actually be managing the data and doing almost the button clicking in the system. Should it be your actual first line teams or should it be your risk champion teams? What have you seen in the past, and what would your advice be to the best model?
Well, that's your favourite question. Do you mean existing historical data or what we might call static data?
So the actual risk control data itself. So managing what's my inherent, what's my control rating, what's my residual look like, my incident management. So in the actual system, who should be clicking the buttons? Because when you're a risk professional, I can make the linkage and I can say, oh yeah, that risk should be this based on this risk rating grid, and I think my control should be X. But when you're in first line,
okay, I heard the question slightly differently. I mean, they're called self-assessments for a reason, right? So, risk teams are there to provide oversight and challenge. And depending on the size of your firm, you can't always achieve that, but that's what you should strive for nevertheless. So this should all be in the business's hands. They should be raising their own risk events. They should be doing their self-assessments. There's a nuance around controls testing, so you might want it independent, you might want them to do it themselves. But yes, absolutely, the business should be clicking the button. In terms of any sort of adding controls into the system and all that sort of stuff, just get a workflow in place. So be the gatekeeper, get them, ultimately stuff should only be coming up during the cycles anyway, right? So think about that governance and structure around how you stop it running away with itself, I would say, yeah.
Can I maybe just add to that, because we had a prior system, particularly for things like loss events. It's amazing how many people who are, real professionals, but they seem to need somebody to hold their hand when they have to use a system that they don't like.
Yeah.
So we decided that we were going to cut the apron strings when we moved to MetricStream. So we did user guides. So we did FAQs and user guides, and we
That's a great point, yeah.
emailed them all out and said, there you go, you don't know how to do it, try it with the user guide. If you can't succeed with the user guide, then we may come over once, but we won't be coming back twice, because come on, we're all professionals. We can get used to a system. And that was actually a bit of a win for us. Just weaning people off that expectation that somebody was going to hold their hand for processes like that.
I would just add as well, the reporting that you present to boards and stuff can also shine a light on people that are not doing it well. So there's the carrot and the stick.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Thank you very much for the insight. Similar position, so Microsoft kind of starting point. I guess one of the big perks and why we all end up there is that it's cheap, it's convenient, everyone understands Microsoft, Excel, etc. Did you find much resistance having to bring a new system in, the extra costs that are involved, and how did you overcome that resistance?
So I had a lot of support for tech enablement in the second line for scalability, so I didn't have that big challenge in terms of getting budget. There is sometimes resistance to I knew how the Excel spreadsheet worked and I filled it in. What was difficult was explaining that you were filling it in incorrectly, and it was just making our life hard. So when you've got a system that is much more intuitive, and yes, you're going to have to get familiar with it, so there is an overhead there. But we addressed that squarely and upfront in every instance. So where we had something that was transforming off an Excel or a Word or some kind of database or whatever the process was, we were very clear and quick to say, this is going to be different. There is no more Excel spreadsheets. They're gone. So we cut off that supply chain. And we, as I said, lots of clinics, lots of workshops, lots of sitting with groups and teams, lots of training. And we felt that was the right way forward for us.
Yeah. I was just going to say as well, if I may, I don't think Microsoft is cheap. I think the technology is cheap, but I don't think the business situation is cheap because you can't manage the quality. And then what you see is people behind the scenes fixing stuff. basically. So one of the things that we tend to do again with clients is that, take a series of different processes, scale them up now, give an estimation of the amount of effort and manpower that goes into it, and contrast that with what it will be like in the future. That cost is not trivial. And that's what fuels a business case, and that's what also gets the business guys interested, because it gives them the value back, and it also gives them the scalability as well. So I think that there is a bit of thinking that needs to go into the way that you articulate these cases for buying technology like this.
We're out of time. Denise,
Very quick,
James,
30 minutes.
Thank you so much indeed. Really valuable. And hopefully, if you have any implementation questions and envisaging delivery, do come and talk to us. Talk to ICF or talk to Denise, and we value your input. So thank you very much all.
Cheers, thank you.
Cheers.